various reasons. But what I would just kind of point out there in relation, what does surplus food actually look like? So most of your listeners will think surplus food is what's left behind at the end of the day from retailers. But what we're dealing with is basically food across the whole of the food supply chain. So that's anything from farmers to growers to producers to manufacturers, yes, retailers, but we tend to take food in from distribution centres. So the huge distribution centres that belong to all of the retailers, let's not mention names.
Okay.
That food then comes into our Fairshare Midlands warehouse in Birmingham, but we've also got sites in Leicester and Nottingham. And we then kind of handle that food and we redistribute that food onto community organisations. And you mentioned about 650. So what does that kind of then look like on the ground? Those 650 organisations are supporting some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. So anything from children to the elderly.
Yeah.
And the reality is they're all really struggling. They're all struggling to keep up with demand. Your listeners will recognise the cost of living crisis is still here. Energy costs, food costs, your kind of basic living costs are still really, really high. So, but at the same time, what is happening for all of those community organisations is that your local authority funding is becoming more difficult to secure. Mm-hmm. Local authorities themselves don't have lots of money. Central government aren't, doing great for supporting local authorities. So across the sector, there's a massive struggle to support people who are, living in poverty. And we kind of see the need in relation to these community organisations needing support for food, and that's kind of where we come in. We enable them to provide food and wraparound and support services for the people that are struggling. But it's hard. It's a challenge for us to keep up with. It's a challenge for us to keep up with demand, even though there's so much food there. There is a cost to redistribution. Food, getting food in and getting food out the door is costly. We have to run vans, we have to run lorries, we have to pay for warehouses and staff. So, but that's then, that's kind of then felt by all of the organisations that we're working with, 650 plus. So, there is a growing need. People are in poverty, people are struggling for various reasons, but the ability to keep up that demand, it won't ever go away.
Okay, it's really interesting. I mean, I've had the privilege of going to your new site, which we'll come on to in a few minutes. But walk us through the journey of surplus food. So, I mean, I've seen your warehouse, so I've seen the massive piles of food which comes there. So just to give the listeners a bit of a sort of a vision, if you like. So they come in. So for instance, if you've got apples, you'll have a big mountain full of apples. They're not packaged in a way to go out. So I think you do the repackaging and send that out. But tell me, the journey of the surplus food, a little bit, how it comes and how it goes out to people.
Yeah, so just obviously touched on kind of, where surplus food comes from. So I think, listeners need to get out of their heads kind of retailers, because everything we handle and we take into our warehouses is what we call pre-store level surplus. So it's surplus food before it's even got to the supermarkets. We have got a solution for the supermarkets, but what we handle is pre-store level surplus. So you're right, things will come in big kind of bulk bags or pallet boxes, loads of produce that otherwise would have gone to waste, and then we have to repack that food so it's suitable for the organisations that we're supplying. Obviously, we couldn't send out a big pallet box of apples because the groups just couldn't handle it. And then those groups, the organisations that we support, then also have to package it up for the individuals to take home or to cook nice meals on site. But the scale of food waste is, I've been involved with Fairshare Midlands now for many years, and when I walk around my warehouses, I'm always amazed by, oh my goodness, if it wasn't for Fairshare Midlands or Fairshare, this food would have been destroyed.
Yeah, and I've got to say that the food is massive mountains worth of food. And I've also got to highlight as well, when we say surplus food is not like out of date or leftover food. The produce that you have is actually all A grade, and I've actually gone and seen that, like potatoes, apples, lemons, whatever it might be, is all A grade food. And how does that happen? So where does it originate from?
So it's A grade to us. It's not A grade to the retailers, and that's generally the reason why the food is surplus. Yeah, surplus food is far from leftover food for left behind people. The food that we handle and the food that we redistribute is all in date, all good quality. We try and focus on nutritional content. It's just become surplus to requirement for a variety of reasons. But Number one reason really is forecasting issues with retailers. The retailers get a bad name and they shouldn't, but it's very difficult despite all of them. And they all, the food industry is getting better because nobody wants surplus because surplus costs money. So no matter what systems and tech they put in to try and determine exactly how many products are going to be sold, they're never going to get it right. So, food is produced en masse in thousands, thousands of items. And what producers do is they will overproduce to make sure that their retailers have got enough items for the customers that are walking in their door. But that will never match up. So number one reason that we get the majority of the food that we get is because there's been overproduction, but it's always in date. It's all really good. It's really, really healthy food. The produce is in this country, unfortunately, surplus is driven by us, the consumers, because we're quite fussy. You all know you walk into a supermarket and you're like, well, those carrots don't quite look the shape I like. So therefore, the impact of us being really quite fussy as consumers is that the retailers don't want to stock items that they know they're not going to sell. But obviously, as a farmer or a producer, you can't actually guarantee what size or shape those products are going to be from the field, falling from an apple tree. So there's this huge amount of surplus that is created before it even gets to stores. So yeah, it's all A grade and healthy to us. But because we know it's nutritionally right and absolutely fine and you can make a great meal out of it, but the retailers just won't stock that kind of food.
I mean, do you find that as a challenge, like, getting the right produce out? And then I suppose the process has to be really quick as well, because obviously it's all fresh items that you're dealing with. I have seen you've got a massive freezer as well, but obviously, things like fruit and vegetables. What's the sort of turnaround, to get it in and then sort of send them out?
Yeah, we've got freezers, we've got big chillers, the warehouses are huge. So again, for listeners to kind of visualise, we have a 23,000 square foot warehouse. What does 23,000 square foot look like? It's massive. It's a massive warehouse in Birmingham, which obviously we're calling the Sir Peter Rigby Coronation Food Hub. And then I just want to kind of again, a good visualisation on the scale of food. So we transport most of our food to the community in what we call long wheelbase vans. Each van can hold about 1 tonne of food. Every month,
1 tonne, did you say?
Yeah. Wow. So every month we're saving about 500 tonnes of food from going to waste. So that's 500 long wheelbase vans parked bumper to bumper full of food that if it wasn't for Fairshare Midlands would have been wasted. But instead we're feeding the community with that food. Wow. So just to give listeners a bit of a visualisation. Because I talk about, it kind of rolls off the tongue, the 23,000 square feet, vans,
what does that mean?
What does that actually mean? And it's huge. The scale of food waste is absolutely huge. But yeah, the turnaround is quick. We've got to get that food from the food industry into our warehouses, onto the system, stored either in the freezers or obviously freezers, you'll have a little bit longer, or into the chillers. And then redistributed out to our community organisations when it's still, whilst it's still got date on it, and still gives them an opportunity to either then pass that food on to their community members or cook a nice meal with it. So we're up against it on the timing front, but everything we do generally, I'd say, has about 48 hours life on it. Now we can, dictate to the food industry that we want longer on it, because obviously they'll do everything they can to try and sell those products.
So just for the listeners out there, you're a massive organisation and you don't actually deal with the public directly. So who are your customers? I know food banks is one of the ones who you actually supply to. So do you want to just list sort of who you actually supply to?
Yeah, so we do support some food banks across the Midlands, but anything from kind of school breakfast clubs to after-school clubs to community centres where, the community centre is bringing people in to eat a hot meal, to elderly day centres, to refuges, a whole range of organisations, pantries. We've a new initiative we've started it, which is called mobile pantries, where we're taking food pantries out to communities. So where you have a community where there isn't a lot of provision and accessing good quality, low cost food is pretty limited, we're taking that solution out. But that's very much in its infancy at the minute, but so far going well. In fact, where it's working well is at a university in Nottingham, which we're looking at extending to
Oh,
a couple of
fantastic.
universities in the West Midlands.
Fantastic. I just want to let listeners know out there, if you've got any questions, we've got Simone in the studio right now. So if you have any questions for them, you can WhatsApp us or a text message on 07440 420 432. Okay, I just want to move on now to your exciting expansion. So you've got the new food hubs. You want to tell us a little bit about that and where it's located?
Yeah, it's located just behind Star City. So I'm sure lots of
Everybody
listeners
will
know where
recognise
Star
that.
City is.
Yeah.
You can't miss it. Really busy at the weekend, not so busy in the week. Yeah, so we actually were located just around the corner from there in 3 very kind of small units. And we had an investor come forward to say they were interested in helping us move and move into a new warehouse so we could grow. So we've always had an ambition to grow, but from our previous site we just couldn't. We were hamstrung by capacity challenges. So we moved to the other side of Star City. We didn't move far.
Yeah.
To a much bigger warehouse that will allow us the opportunity to double our output over the next 3 years. So we're currently, reaching between 60 and 80,000 people a week. It's very hard to know exactly how many people we're supporting, but at least 60,000 people. But obviously we can't count how many people are walking into our members' doors every day. But we want to grow that to at least 130,000 over the next 3 years. And, so we'll be saving loads more food from going to waste and helping to feed, the growing number of people that are going without good food.
So I've had the privilege of seeing your previous site as well. So you were previously in Nechel's area. So you've come sort of Erdington way towards Star City. So people obviously who haven't seen the site, just describe it to us and what's the difference, how you've expanded and what new facilities you've got at this site.
Yeah, well, it's twice the size. It's a nice big, industrial space. It's a huge warehouse. But what we've also got there is a commercial kitchen where we'll be adding on to our employability programs, catering and hospitality programs. So we'll be helping people to gain skills in catering and hospitality and help them get them, closer to finding work. Nice kind of offices. We've got a collaboration and conference room where businesses could rent that space out and do some volunteering as well. So they could come and spend half a day doing volunteering and half a day having meetings upstairs.
So you're creating opportunities specifically for the youth. You've got a training program there as well that you're actually supporting the youth to come in and you're training them up to work there as well.
Yeah, well, we have done that for many years. We do that under our banner called Skillshare. So that's kind of like a brand of FareShare. And we've already supported about 700 people to gain skills and help them move further to gaining meaningful employment. But with this new site, we can do so much more. So anything from forklift truck training to warehousing and logistics to food safety, hygiene courses. Even things like literacy and numeracy. So we're literally, we're addressing kind of the needs that are, that exist, and unemployment has just gone up. Youth unemployment in Birmingham is the highest in the country. So massive issues there. So we're responding to the need and the issues that we know exist. But also at the same time, warehousing logistics is a growing industry in the Midlands. So we're, our courses and our programs help people gain skills so that they can move into jobs that are generally better paid than anywhere else in the country, particularly if you've got a forklift truck license. So the kitchen, that just allows us to kind of develop those programs so that people can gain catering skills, so they can learn, cooking skills, from anything from basic to even more advanced. But that's a new initiative for us and really exciting.
It's really exciting that you're helping the community in so many ways. That not just obviously on the food side of things, but you're putting them into employment, you're training them, you've got so many programs that you're running. And I think you mentioned about 700 there, but I've got over 1,500 individuals written on my piece of paper here. So
yeah, where did you get that from?
I don't know. I think it's double to what you just told me.
We have already helped 700, but we'll be able to at least double that over the next 3 years. So by 2028, that number should look like about 1,500.
So your colleague sent me some notes before this, and in there it says over 1,500 individuals have moved into work training and work experience or employment
across the Midlands.
That's probably across the Midlands.
So across the Midlands.
Okay, that's really good. Okay, so what challenges do you think somebody regains when they have the confidence to go through this work?
What challenges do they have?
What challenges do they have? Yeah, coming through to you and.
Yeah, many challenges. So what the individuals that we're supporting, we don't do things that are easy at Fairshare Midlands. You'll get to know that over time. But they're classed as economically inactive. But the real answer is that the people that we're supporting are really vulnerable. You're talking second, third generation unemployed. People have gone through abuse. People, where English isn't, a strong, their first language. People haven't got any formal education, have just fallen through the gaps from the education system and have been unemployed for a long period of time, or even just haven't ever been employed.
Can I touch on that a little bit? So, I mean, the area that you're predominantly in, there are a lot of people who actually don't speak English as their first language. Can they work with you? I mean, you just mentioned that possibly they can. So how does that work? Do they have to have a certain level of English before they can do that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be tricky for us to. I mean, that's something we've got our eye on, and how where could we support individuals to that. English is a real challenge for them, but that comes with a cost. You have to have people that can support those individuals, and that all depends on funding. But if we can secure the funding to support those individuals, we'll absolutely give it a go.
That's great. Okay. All right, so that's given us a little bit of insight of how your operation works. So if somebody's listening, a business leader, HR director, what can they do sort of to help you?
There's loads of ways that businesses could support us. I mean, HR director, we absolutely need employers to come forward. So not to guarantee jobs, because there isn't really anybody out there that can guarantee jobs, but to work with us on the employability programs, to get to understand about our employability programs, and for them to maybe guarantee interviews for individuals that we feel ready to move on to employers. So I think the reassurance that we can provide to local businesses is that if we don't think the participants are ready to move into a job, we're not going to signpost them on. So it's having that. But first of all, you've got to get to know Fairshare Midlands. You've got to trust us. You've got to trust our standards. But yeah, to just get in touch with us and to learn about our programs and the skills that we're helping people develop and learn, and to support us where they can, and it could be guaranteed interviews, or it could be work experience to help us, to extend our employability programs.
So if somebody wants to go through that, if they want to do some voluntary work, or go specifically, you're actually supporting the youth as well, which is really great. How would they get in touch with you? Website's the
easiest way. Social media, Fairshare Midlands. Just Google Fairshare Midlands, and there's many ways that people can get in touch with us. That's the best way. But there's other ways that businesses can get involved and support our work. So I think that's quite specific. Your HR directors or your employment departments coming forward and speaking to us about employment opportunities and about the programs. But then there's corporate volunteering as well. So there's lots of organisations that support their employees to have a couple of days volunteering days a year. So get your staff to come and spend a day with us at the hub in Addington.
Yeah.
Or come and use the space if you've got meetings, team meetings. Hire our space from us. We want the hub to be part of everyone, the community, and for employers and businesses to really understand what we're doing and the impact that we're having, and kind of share and be part of our journey over the next 3 years.
That's fantastic. It is a really great place. I mean, I've been there. I keep saying it again and again, but it's a fantastic place to sort of come there. The environment is good. Everything feels new and fresh because you've just moved into this building, and you're helping and supporting so many people. I mean, think about all the people who are hungry out there. Without your business being there, essentially, what would they do? I mean, where would that food go? Actually, what would happen if obviously you guys, aren't doing the great work that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, most of it would go to anaerobic digestion, which is basically turning food into fuel. So that's not.
Sorry, say that again. Turning food into fuel.
Yeah. So it's not. It's not a terrible thing.
Okay.
It's better than it being wasted. I mean, years ago, food would go to landfill. That doesn't really happen anymore across the food industry. So I would say that anaerobic digestion is probably our biggest competitor, because it's easy for the food industry to send their food to what we call AD.
Talk me through that. How does that work?
Well, basically, if a food company has food waste, so if the food waste is past past the date, obviously we can't handle it, so that food would go to AD. So that food goes through a process that creates gas, which is then used to create energy. So that is, it's not a bad thing for the environment, because it's not creating greenhouse gases, which are really bad for the environment. So that's generally what happens to food waste if it doesn't come to FareShare. But the real issue is that a lot of that food could come through to FareShare for us to redistribute to the people that we're supporting and the organisations that we're supporting. But that's the battle we keep fighting. But the kind of barrier to us doing, we could grow by 5 or 6 times, but the barrier for us is the financial implications. Yeah.
So how are you funded? I mean, do you get any support from the government, or is it all sort of through your own sort of resources?
So FareShare Midlands is one of kind of 16 network partners, and we all kind of trade under the FareShare banner. FareShare UK kind of are based in London, and they work they do all the advocacy work with the government, campaigning, lobbying the government. And we've recently had a significant grant from DEFRA to help basically take more food from farmers from farm gate. So, when you came into our house, you saw all those potatoes and apples. That probably would have been funded through DEFRA. We at FareShare Midlands don't really get any funding from central government, but FareShare UK are very much working on it. That's for us to really upscale will require something bigger than just working locally.
Fantastic. We're just going to shortly move to a break, and we'll be back very shortly. Okay, guys, we are back and we are on Iman 1. You're listening to Jay Sheikh. If you've got any questions, please send us a WhatsApp message on 07440 420 432. And we've got live in the studio, just to remind you guys, from Fairshare Midlands, we've got Simone Connolly in the studio. So, Simone, we have had a question come along, so I'm just going to ask you this. So it says, "Good afternoon. Can I ask Simone a question? I'm a volunteer working for a food bank. Can we get help with food, and how does Fairshare work?"
Yeah, so potentially, and the reason why I say potentially with food banks is that a lot of food banks will only redistribute ambient food. And obviously the nature of surplus food doesn't really lend itself to much ambient food. So the majority of the food that we kind of handle and redistribute is either chilled or frozen or produce. So we do get some ambient food. So it really depends kind of what your food requirements are. But if you just wanted to learn a little bit more about whether it is possible, then the best thing to do is just go onto our website and have a look. Somebody will get back to you and talk you through the process. But my experience is food banks tend to just be limited and just don't really match the types of food that become surplus, from the food industry. But it's worth reaching out.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and just before the break, we were talking about how you guys are funded. So did you want to expand a little bit on that and tell us how your funding works?
Yeah, so funded not enough, like all
Not enough.
charities. Yeah,
As
I mean
always.
the sector is really struggling for funding. We're all competing against each other. But we've been operational now for 20 years. I started off. I founded Fairshare Leicester, then Fairshare East Midlands, and now we're called Fairshare Midlands because we hived off Fairshare West Midlands from Fairshare UK. So we basically support organisations from the East Coast to the Welsh border, so right across the centre of the country. So there's many opportunities for us to access funding from different local authorities, which is a struggle, but also lots of other trusts and foundations that are, will support our work. And then also there's corporate organisations who have kind of ESG and CSR, or they'll have foundations. For example, Jaguar Land Rover launched their foundation last year. So like all other charities is the quick answer. Fairshare Midlands is a charity, so we have to get funding to support our work. But then we have other income streams as well. So employability programs, we're not able to deliver unless they're funded. So some of that might be through local authority funding. There used to be something called the European Social Fund, which was replaced with other funding. So those programs are very much reliant on us being able to deliver them with funding. And then we charge a membership fee to our groups.
Really?
The 650 community organisations that receive the food, they will pay what we call a membership fee, but that really covers a kind of the delivery costs or the handling cost of getting that food to them. That can be quite controversial with the sector, because there's there can be a view that the food should be given out for free, but we just couldn't afford to do that. But we do know that the cost of the membership fee is around 10% of the retail value of the food. So say, for example, an organisation spends £3,000 with us a year on the delivery of that food. That's probably worth about £30,000 worth of food. So
how does the membership work? So is it like, for instance, a food bank comes to you and they've got to register with you and pay this fee to sort of get the food off you?
Yeah, so I think that's the other thing, is we don't just, it's surplus food, but it's very compliant. What we do is, from an environmental health perspective, from a food safety perspective, we have to make sure that the food is handled, stored, delivered safely and compliantly. For a couple of reasons, really. One is because you just don't want to be redistributing food that's, hasn't gone through a compliant process. But we also have to support the reputation of the food industry who are giving us that food. The last thing that we want is that food to be, non-compliant, out of date, and one of our big food suppliers finding out, because they will stop supplying us, and rightly so. But the organisations that we support, we also have to validate that they are compliant. So from a food safety perspective, that they have all the right handling measures in place, the right food safety manuals, and processes and systems in place, and that their food is going to people who are genuinely in need. Because, the last thing that we want is we're talking to the government and people that we need to support us, that food going out into the open market when it should actually be going to people who are, in need. So there's a bit of a process to go through. It's not just, it's surplus food is not just going out to communities without any kind of due care and attention. So that's kind of what...
It's a lot more in-depth to what somebody would have thought about, You just simply think about, food coming in and going out, but actually there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, people think, it's surplus food, it's left behind, it's leftover food, we can just get that out, get it in and get it out. No, there's a lot more to it. And that's, one of the things that the membership fee covers as well, is that, we need to safeguard the people that are eating that food, because the food is very close to date. But also, a big percentage of the people that we're supporting are vulnerable. So the elderly, poor immune systems, children who are malnourished. So we need to make sure that the food is going through the correct kind of channels and redistribution systems.
Have you got a procedure in place of like how it's kept fresh and so forth? How do you monitor that? It must be a real challenge.
It's a challenge, but it's what we do. Fundamentally, that's what we do. Whilst we have lots of volunteers that support our work, we also have staff that are very skilled and trained in kind of running, food safe systems, and all of our food that needs to be chilled is temperature checked at least 3 times a day or electronically. Our freezers and our chillers are kept at the right temperatures. Our vans are all chilled and the temperatures are recorded. So there's a big kind of food process and food safety systems that are in place at all of our warehouses and managed by people who are experienced in that.
Okay. Just to give people a scale of, how big your site is, you mentioned square footage, but in terms of people, sort of how many people would you say are volunteering there? How many vans have you got, for example, just to give people an idea?
Yeah, so volunteers not enough. I mean, a minimum number of volunteers that we need a day is 17, which doesn't sound like a lot.
Okay.
But actually every day, Monday to Saturday. So we desperately need more volunteers. So any listeners are, listening to this, go to the website and have a look. There's various ways that people can volunteer. People don't have to come in every day. They could do 1 day a week or a couple of days a week, and it's, jobs like driving the vans, to going out with the van drivers, to sorting the food in the warehouses, to even, we've got new volunteer roles now in the kitchen. And then we have, you've put me on the spot now, how many staff members? About 12 staff members in our Birmingham warehouse. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but
the only reason I ask is because I just had a nose and had a look at some of your pictures on your website, and you've got like loads of people working there. So
yeah,
it was just to get an idea, really.
That's to do the basic jobs, bare minimum, getting the food in, getting the food out, and that's one thing we do pride ourselves in. Unless we really absolutely have to, we do not drop our service. So absolute primary activity is getting the food in and getting that food out to our community organisations, because if we fail that service, those people that are struggling to eat probably won't eat or will eat very poorly for that week. Or that community organisation may have to then go out and spend £300 of their funding or their funds to buy food when they can't really afford to do that. So so we do pride ourselves on a really high delivery service.
Okay, can we expand a little bit about who the people are who network with you and who sort of redistribute that food?
So the community organisations. Yeah. So like I say, we support organisations right from the East Coast to the Welsh border, but across Birmingham we support a whole range of organisations, from schools. So we don't do statutory provision. So when I say statutory provision, that's kind of your school dinners that are funded by local authority or the government. Things like prisons, we wouldn't be able to supply prisons because that's all funded. So it's any community partner or charity or community organisation that's providing a service to their community, a food service. But it might not just be a food service. It might be other things that they do. So like financial resilience, or we might support a training provider. Basically, we provide them with the food so that they can support their community with either a hot meal or with food parcels, or, like I touched on earlier, the pantry service where we're taking out a pantry. So what does a pantry look like? It's basically we take a van out into a community loaded with really nice food, and then that food is then packaged up for individuals to come forward and access that food.
Oh, really? So is that direct to the public then? Something like that?
Well, it's tailored to the public that we know. So the individuals will pay like a membership fee, like £5, but for £5 they're probably getting £30 worth of food.
Oh, okay.
So we know we tend to do it in partnership with the community. So like, for example, I mentioned the university in Nottingham, and that's something we're going to be piloting in Birmingham as well. we know that the people in that community are struggling to afford to eat good food. But we don't means test. We don't ask for evidence of benefits or anything like that. So we try and be as inclusive as we possibly can, but we have to have a knowledge that that community is either based in a high area of deprivation, or we kind of have an awareness that the individuals that are accessing that food have a need to eat better, basically, for very low cost.
Oh, that's really good. I mean, you're benefiting the community in so many ways. I've got to keep emphasizing. It's fantastic, how you've gone from, just bringing the food in to supplying all of your local suppliers. Tell me about the suppliers. I mean, what kind of, things do they have to go through, or what sort of struggles would they have to sort of supply this food? I suppose a time limit, obviously, there's urgency of getting things out quickly.
Yeah. Well, there's no struggle for working with Fair Share Midlands. We're very easy to work with, So, really, any food companies that are listening, any corporate organisations, commercial organisations that are listening, I'm bound to say this, I'm the CEO of Fair Share Midlands. So,
of course, yeah.
But, our impact is significant. So being associated with us, your food will be, and your support will be helping to reach, anything up to 80,000 people a week, supporting people into employment, saving good food from being wasted. I mean, what's not to love, really? But from a food industry perspective, we try and make it as easy as possible for that food partner. We know that, it's hassle. Really, at the end of the day, as easy as it is, it's probably easier to redistribute that food to anaerobic digestion, to put it on a van, because you don't really have to focus so much on the date. But for you're getting a huge impact by working with us. So we ask food companies to be in touch, to understand the processes, to understand what we require from them. Don't discount working with Fair Share Midlands because we need the food to be in date. Just reach out to us and find out what's involved, because by supporting us, you're supporting your community, and we then try and make that as easy as we possibly can once we've kind of started on that journey with whatever company gets in touch with us or wants to support us.
I'm just thinking out loud now. I don't know whether this affects you or sort of one of your partners that you would work with. So, your external partners that you work with, like you work with the charities, you work with food banks. So, when we go to restaurants and things, there's like a food standard thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything that exists for, food banks? Like, is one better than another, or would they all be the same, or essentially are they all, being supplied from the same person?
Well, any organisation, whether it's a charity, community organisation, if they're providing a food service to their community, they will all have to be registered with the EHA. So,
okay.
So you have to have an environmental health rating.
There is a certain standard.
So I guess people that are accessing those services, whether it's a food bank, whether it's a community meal, whether whatever the support service is, the food service is, then they can have reassurance that they'll be registered with environmental health. If they're a Fair Share member, you can be even more reassured, because we don't necessarily do physical inspections, but we do validation checks every single year. So we go above and beyond kind of environmental health to make sure that those organisations are compliant and food safe. And the reason why we go above and beyond, and sometimes over the past 20 years, I thought, do we really need to do this? And the answer is yes, because one, again, is we know we have to protect the reputation of the food industry who are, giving us this food. But most importantly, we have to protect the health of the individuals that are receiving the food. And, all of the people that are receiving food through these organisations are vulnerable in some way. They wouldn't be accessing that food support service if they weren't. So, again, that's anything from the elderly to children who, whose health conditions may not be as good as, a lot of listeners that have, good health fortune. So we have to protect many people. And that's where kind of the cost of running Fair Share, one of the elements of the cost is, it's not just about the logistics, but it's also about the compliance and the integrity and the safety of the food and the systems and the processes.
You touched on vulnerable people. I mean, what how would you identify that somebody's vulnerable? Is there a process that you would go through?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't go through that process ourselves at Fair Share. We, other than the mobile pantry, which is a pilot project for us, which is what we class as business to consumer, 95% of our work is business to business. So we expect the organisations, the community organisations, and we're currently supporting about 650, to make sure that the individuals that are accessing their service need that support. So they have a range of checks and measures to ensure that those individuals are in need of support services in some way, shape or form. But what we don't insist on, because there's some organisations that do insist on it, is that the individuals are means tested. That's something that me personally feel quite passionate about. That, look,
I can see the
we
passion.
we don't, that individual, if you're living in one of the postcode areas across the West Midlands where it's in the 85% in most deprived communities in the country, you're not going to have people coming forward that really, could be going to get their food from Waitrose, are you? So, and these community organisations are based in the heart of the community, so they know their communities, they know the individuals that are coming into their community projects to access their services. So we rely on their knowledge and their kind of their commitment and their support of their communities to make sure that the food is getting to where it needs to go.
I mean, you've got great service in process over here, where, you're supplying to all of these organizations. Why do you think so much, theft is going on out there, and people are, I've seen if you look on social media, people are stealing items and this, that, and other. Why do you think that's happening in this day and age?
People are broke. People are, cost of living crisis. We don't talk about the cost of living crisis so much now, but, look at the cost of fuel, energy, food is expensive.
Yeah.
Everything.
Inflation is a lot higher than it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, inflation's coming down and, prices are rising more slowly, but people are already struggling. So, unemployment is high. People are desperate, basically, and that there's also people that are living chaotic lives. There's alcoholics, there's people who are struggling for whatever reason. They've got into that cycle of poverty and cycle of almost kind of self-destruction that turning to crime is their solution. It's not the right solution, of course, and there are many organisations who are there, that are there to support these individuals, but I go back to my kind of opening kind of sentence. The organisations that we're supporting are also struggling. They cannot cope with 50 more people walking through their doors. So as a sector, we're being squeezed because there's so many people that need supporting. The government, of course, have got a role to play. We've all got a role to play, but the reality is, there's struggle felt across the country.
You guys are doing your part in obviously helping poverty, but what do you think the government can do to help, people, who are left hungry, people who are homeless? How do they, what things can be done to improve?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to fair share and kind of our work, what the kind of active conversations that we're having with the government are around the redistribution subsidies. So there's many. So, for example, anaerobic digestion, I think there's about £900 million that goes into supporting that process and the cost associated with anaerobic digestion. If some of that £900 million was redirected to food redistribution and to fair share, let's just say, for example, £15 million every single year, that could help us, have the confidence to work with the food industry to get that food into our warehouses and get that food out to communities. That's what we really want. That's what the government could do to help us. But all of your listeners will know there's many things that the government can do to help the individuals that we're supporting. I perhaps won't get too political because I'll probably get myself into trouble.
We don't want to go too political, but there's just simple things. I mean, just from personal experience, I mean, I travel a lot. So recently I've just come back from Greece. Something so simple, which I've seen over there, I haven't seen. I mean, there might be homeless people there, I don't know. But, over here, we've got more and more people becoming homeless, more and more people, going deprived and into poverty. There's simple things over there, like normal streets you're walking on, there's orange trees, there's lemon trees.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the rules are, but I assume it's free and open to, people who are sort of homeless or people who need that. I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, don't you think simple things like that can be put in place, by the government to help, poverty and help
Yeah.
all of us, really, essentially.
Well, it kind of starts with education, doesn't it? It's teaching people how to cook on a budget as well. You only have to look around you how many fast food places there are. So we've got ourselves in this cycle of things just being very easy to access from fast food and ready meals, and really it kind of starts at the beginning of life almost, kind of teaching people how to cook on a budget, cook really basically. And that's something that we're introducing at our new hub in Birmingham, the Sir Peter Wrigley Coronation Food Hub. So we'll be working with our organisations to help them cook with surplus food so that they can then kind of pass those skills and that knowledge on to the individuals that are walking through their doors. So, and that will be range from people who are vulnerably housed to homeless people, to individuals in their community that probably don't know what to do with produce. One item that we kind of always joke about is celeriac, but there's so many things you can do with celeriac, and there's a lot of surplus celeriac, let me tell you. Our warehouses
Really?
have always got celeriac in.
Go on, then give us some examples where you can use it.
Well, you could do celeriac mash, you could do celeriac chips, you can do celeriac steaks, you can do celeriac soup. You can, there's so many things you could put it in, and that's just one example. But even some basic produce items, a lot of people in our communities don't know what to do with.
Okay.
So we've kind of lost our way a little bit on kind of cooking and nutrition.
So do you think it's education then that we need to increase?
I think education plays a part. It's not going to lift people out of poverty, but it does play a part. We've got, like I say, we've got ourselves into this situation where everybody expects everything to be readily available, really quick, from fast food to like I say, the ready meals, and we've got to try and move away from that. And that the government do play a part in that. What is kind of on the curriculum in schools? Is it consistent? Is it achieving what it needs to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, food, I think, the knowledge needs to increase over there. And I think you're right, it is absolutely on education and educating the public out there on food and, what's great in terms of food. And then obviously your services, I don't think people, know, that perhaps, that, your services exist, or how to sort of, approach that and so forth, which is why, one of our messengers were out there saying, how to get in touch with you. It's a great thing that you're doing for all of the community. And I've got to say hats off to you for doing it for doing it for such a long time. And you're expanding, you're doing a lot better. So what's next for you? I mean, what would your challenge be to be sort of, what's the next big thing for you?
I think our kind of, real focus, I mean, food redistribution is what we do. It's what we've always done. Fair Share has been a charity now for 30 years. So, we're well regarded by the food industry. The government now know about us. We're banging on their door. We know the food's there. The challenge is kind of the cost of getting that food out to communities. I think our real focus over the next 3 years is supporting people who are struggling to find work, and that's why whether that's because they've got poor mental health, or they're the second or third generation unemployed, never had a job, and really trying to tackle the root causes of poverty. If we can get let's just say, I don't know, over the next 3 years, we want to support 1,000 people move closer to employment. If we can support 100 of those individuals actually into jobs, that's 100 people that we're lifting out of poverty, that the future looks a lot brighter. So they're not having to access the food banks or the community organisations. So that's
the ultimate goal, isn't it?
And that's what we call systemic change. That's actually tackling why are people in this situation and getting them out of it. But you do that again through education, through upskilling, through development, through believing in them. And kind of getting them into work. And when I say meaningful work, it's good work where the hourly rate is decent, where they've got good terms and conditions.
Fantastic. Well, we're still in talks with Simone. We'll be back just after the break. Guys, welcome back. That actually brings us to the end of the show. I just wanted to say that we've learned today that solving hunger isn't just about charity alone. It's about logistics, infrastructure, partnership, and opportunity. I just want to thank you, Simone, for coming along today from FareShare.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch with you and hopefully get you onto future shows. So thanks once again.
No worries. And any listeners, go onto the website, have a look to see how you can get involved.
Any final messages for people who are listening?
Oh no, just thanks for listening. And yeah, I mean, our impact is significant, and hopefully people have learned something new today about FareShare. But any further interest, please do go to our website, FareShare Midlands, and see how you might get involved, or just to learn even more about our work. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And next show after me is going to be Habib. Guys, keep listening to Iman One. I'm Jay Sheikh. And